Hi everybody, this is Christy Knipe, and since my final project for Hypertext Hypermedia turned out to be a website that I'm not actually posting live, I had to figure out a way to share this with everybody, so I made a video of it using Screencast-O-Matic, and I'm going to walk you through the steps of what it was that I did. I downloaded the curriculum that I ended up using instead of working on it live from the internet, and so every time that I worked on it, I would come in and look at the instructor version of things so that I could read both the instructor side of it and the student side of it. So I ended up creating a website that's based off of this particular curriculum from Washington University, and it's Web Design and Development 1. This is a new version of it, and I'd been teaching an old version and picking pieces from it but not ever doing the whole thing. So I wanted to kind of work through the whole process and make sure that I understood things more thoroughly. So each time I would come in and read from the different modules about what was going on, and then look at it from the teacher's perspective, and then work through the lessons for the students. There are 8 modules, or 8 units, I'm sorry, 8 units in this curriculum, and each of them has 2 or 3 different modules and 2 or 3 lessons within each of those. So I worked through the whole thing gradually, and I was trying to do them 1 week per unit, and I got a little behind on that process, so I kind of had to do some catching up. Anyway, this is what the curriculum looks like. It has some explanation that when I do this with my students, we end up going through in class and talking about the options with the lesson, the information that's covered there, and then there's always an activity for the students to do. Sometimes it's a group activity, sometimes it starts with a group and then they have individual work to do. They always have different resources at the bottom that you can click through to. For example, this one will take me to a live website for the Webby Awards, and then I could, browse that. We could talk about it as a group or whatever. So it gives a lot of options for ways that you can incorporate it in class and make it take somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes usually per lesson is what they estimated. So as I worked through it, I ended up creating a website. Let me get back to my actual portfolio here. So I ended up creating a website by handwriting code. The first unit was all about, or the first module, the first unit was all about planning, evaluating how websites work and how you know when you have a good website and how designers organize information. And then I started to get in the second unit into actually writing code. So I started the very beginnings of this with establishing a background for this that had no color. It was just basic text, how to get text on a page, and then started figuring out how to make links to things. This is actually an unordered list, and so I had to figure out how to do that, and sublists within lists and those kinds of things, so that I was nesting information. That's always part that I use with my students, so that stuff was really familiar to me. That was what Unit 2 was all about, and they always have a reflection at the end. As they've revamped this, they focused more on adding different ways of getting the students to writing incorporated within this, so I thought that was kind of handy to have. Unit 3 was one that I was really interested in because that was about CSS, and I have never completed that unit before, so this was really kind of the main reason why I wanted to do this. So the variety of colors and things that are on the page were all things that it had me play with in learning how to use cascading style sheets to establish the colors and the fonts and different ways of managing the content of a website. As I worked through it, it helped. We ended up creating these buttons for all different subpages to go to. So the I should back up and say that the premise behind this curriculum involves a lot of dealing with accessibility issues for people who are using the internet, and so there was a lot of readings that I had to do along with that, and then came up with this table of information about things to do if you have a user who's got a characteristic of having a certain accessibility issue, how you can design the site to make it usable by people with a variety of different abilities. So this was one of the activities that I had to do through one of the units of study. Beyond that, each unit has a subpage that I created. So for example, the CSS one, the page itself incorporates that. There wasn't a whole lot from the variety of buttons across here that really reflected that. Unit 4 is one that I've done pretty frequently in the past because I like the information that it teaches about graphics. So on the graphics subpage, first of all, I had to do a couple of lessons that were all about what graphics are for on a website, which I always think is good. There were some things about design and some things about color that were really helpful. And then evaluating some websites and determining whether they appropriately use the graphics that are incorporated in them, and that's a group activity, so I got to read through that information again and not really apply it so much, but I made note of where that would fit in the contents of the page. There was also some evaluation of specific graphics and having to evaluate whether they should, which format is the best one to use those for, so that's what the second section is. There's an activity of creating a web photo album that teaches the students to find images from a variety of sources. It's taking pictures with a camera, it's scanning pictures in, it's finding them from different sources online. It has a whole subset curriculum about copyright, which I use with my students pretty frequently. And so then this is the result of that, creating a photo album that includes captions and has thumbnails of pictures, and you can click on it and it takes you to a larger version of a picture. That's me with my phone that I got last year, and some different pictures that I was able to incorporate into it. And then we also created buttons that were things that had to download from a certain site and then add them to my web page. So that's what the graphics unit was about, and I've used that one in the past. Then I got into a couple more units that I had not done before. Unit 5 was all about scripting, and this was the first time I have ever looked at JavaScript. And I was able to accomplish what it said. I'm not really sure that I understand it very thoroughly yet, but I did accomplish what I was supposed to do with that site, which was to create a subpage that would include using alerts that could be opened or hidden, to show or hide different alerts, and then also a clock that shows the actual time and can be shown or hidden from the page. And I was able to do that using code by following their directions. Like I said, I'm not sure I could recreate that. And I did have trouble trying to accomplish that when I got into Dreamweaver, which was one of the later lessons that I did. After Unit 5 about scripting, there was a unit about usability. And I found the information in this really interesting, but it wasn't really something that I could do as an individual for a site that I wasn't actually posting live, because it was how to take a site that you've created and walk it through the process of determining whether it functions appropriately. And I've done usability studies before. The school district where I used to work, I was the webmaster, and my students actually worked on the school district's website. And so we did usability studies there. Prior to becoming a teacher, I worked at a public television station, and I created the website for that facility. And so we did usability studies actually with some members of our viewership. So I've conducted those before and understand the concept. I just ended up doing all of the readings for that and creating the subpage that went along with it, but I didn't actually have any activities that I could do since I'm not posting this site live. And then I got into the units that I always think are kind of fun, and those are, Unit 7 is about using web design software. It used to always just refer to Dreamweaver. Now in their redesigned version of it, it included some other programs, but I mainly focused on Dreamweaver because that's what I have. Although I have Dreamweaver from CS3, so it's kind of outdated, but it is one that I'm familiar with and have used before. So in Unit 7, I started off by evaluating the site and determining how I could use Dreamweaver to create the same kind of thing, seeing how things worked in that program, which was kind of a nice refresher course. And then Unit 8 was where I was supposed to actually use that program to create a site for a client. So what I ended up doing, following their instructions, let me back up for a level here. Following their instructions, I created a copy of my entire portfolio and did some things messing with the site and redesigning. So you'll notice that this has the same content, but some aspects of it look a little bit different. That was because I was playing with, I had to go in and redesign some things related to the style sheet. It asked, to change colors, figure out how you could modify things with the style sheet. Again, following the directions that they gave, I was able to, change colors and change fonts and a bunch of stuff. But I had trouble establishing those things with the style sheet when I was using Dreamweaver to create a site. So what I had is very basic. So this is what I did in Unit 7, just playing with the site and changing up some things a little bit. And then I started over from scratch. Since I was, again, not creating a site for a real client as recommended in that curriculum, I just started from scratch and created the whole root folder again with the index file and made a new version of the site, but everything was created in Dreamweaver. So I made a different color set just to make it a little clearer and cleaner instead of trying to make it, of the variety of things that I was trying to do whenever I was experimenting with it the first time around. There were a couple things I could never accomplish. Couldn't figure out how to make the buttons out of the text that I did with the style sheet the first time. I even went back and tried to lift that style from, from the index file for my other one, and I could not get that to function correctly in Dreamweaver, and I'm not sure if that's because I have a problem with my version of Dreamweaver. I'm sure it's one little character someplace that I wasn't doing correctly. but basically just recreated the site again, and simplified some things, and was more concerned about how it actually looked. When I was going through it the first time, I was not concerned at all about the fact that the colors didn't match. I was just trying a variety of different things. So this is what the page looked like whenever I got it finished using Dreamweaver, which, as I've always found with my students, is way quicker to be able to use that WYSIWYG editor. So what took me weeks and weeks to accomplish, hours and hours of work the first time through when I was handwriting the code, took a matter of just a few days to finish, with the time that I had available to put toward it. So this is the site that I created with that. I used the same images again. I created a different little banner to put at the top just because the other one was so garish and unattractive. And I didn't go through all the graphic thing again with like redoing all of those steps. I just used graphics that I had. But I think otherwise it pretty much worked. The other thing that I could never really accomplish was getting the clock and alert button to work with the JavaScript. So two of the things that were the style, one thing from the style sheet, one thing from the Java scripting that was what I hoped to accomplish with this. I could do them when I was writing code, but I could not get them to work when I was using Dreamweaver. So those were a little bit of shortcomings. But anyway, I think this will be helpful whenever I'm using this curriculum in the spring semester with my students. I had not had a chance yet to go through and look at the new changes that they'd made to it, and for the most part I like the changes that they've done to the curriculum, and I think it will be good for my kids whenever we use this in a really brief, about a 3-week overview of web design that we do in my digital media technology class. So that's a really quick overview. I talked a million miles a minute, I understand. Thanks for taking a look at it, and I appreciate any feedback that anybody can give me, and hope everybody else had a successful semester and got their projects finished. Thanks.